The University of Superior has been a huge boon for Magnolia County. It has attracted thousands of new residents to the area while improving the fortunes of existing residents. However, not everyone is sharing in this prosperity. The demand for housing coupled with the increase in taxes is making it difficult for the region's most vulnerable residents to be able to afford to live in the community. The rents are just too damn high these days. But to some people, like James, a problem is an opportunity in search of a solution. And he knows the solution: more housing and fast. He approaches Jamila with an idea. He wants to purchase these 4 parcels across the river from Bend and develop them as new neighborhoods in Bend. And they can afford to do this because homes in Verde Beach are significantly more expensive than they are in Magnolia County. And the couple made so much on the sale of their property in Verde Beach that they were able to purchase their home here in Bend with cash and still have money on the sidelines. And though Jamila is nervous about the idea, she's always trusted James' instincts just as he has always trusted hers. So she agrees after many lengthy discussions. And just as soon as she does, James meets with Nick King, an acquaintance he has met through building homes, to discuss purchasing the properties. He's amazed that this guy is the largest landowner in the county, but relieved that he doesn't seem to understand what he has. The two quickly agree on a sale price and close just as soon as James hires surveyors to ensure that the land is actually buildable. James' plan is to develop the most expensive and highest margin lots himself. The rest of the lots will be sold off and developed by other home builders. But before he can do that, he must plat out the neighborhoods, build the roads, and bring utilities to each of the home sites. But James isn't the only one working to find a solution to the high rent problem. Bend City government has been working too. They have just completed a rewrite of their comprehensive plan to increase densities along Main Street. They've also been working with the state to get a grant to extend Eisenhower Street across the Carp River to the university to reduce travel expenditures for area residents. In this episode, we'll work to make the region more affordable by developing new neighborhoods and increasing the density in older ones. And we'll make sure that these neighborhoods are realistically developed, which means there'll be a bit of imperfection. And if you like building new neighborhoods, hit the like button. And if you prefer redevelopment, hit the like button for that too, and let me know what you prefer down in the comments. Or just drop an emoji that represents what you prefer for the sake of engagement. Without any further ado, let's jump right in. Hello and welcome back to Magnolia County on this cold and rainy winter day. It looks a lot like what I'm seeing out the window right now. We are going to kick things off by platting out our neighborhoods and laying out the roads and pedestrian facilities. Now, there are going to be a couple of guiding principles that we have today. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we're not encroaching upon the existing highways in this area. These will all be upgraded to 4-lane arterials in the future. We don't want our local roads butting right up against them. Second, we want to make sure that we're building as few roads as possible. This will be something that James really cares about. He's not going to want to build more roads than he has to because all of that expense cuts into his bottom line. And then third, we're going to want to preserve all of the waterfront for trails and public open space, just like we did on the other side of the river. The city would be able to have a little bit of leverage on James and basically say, if you want to annex in and use city services, you're going to need to preserve this space. It's what is in our comprehensive plan. The very first thing I want to do is lay out all of the roads along our arterials so that we can ensure that we're preserving the amount of space that we need. So let's turn on our contour lines, and I'm going to get rid of our snap to zoning cell length temporarily so we can snap to the center of this road right here. This is where we will begin. We'll need to come down, I'm guessing 9 units, and this will preserve enough space. You can see it right here, where if we were to upgrade this to be a 4-lane road, we would not encroach upon our zoning. That is exactly what I want. So 9 units will be what we try to maintain along all of these roads. Now down here, I'm going to actually make a connection across bridging what will be this neighborhood right here to this one. We'll go 9 units on this side and 9 on this side. And this will also be a very nice guideline for us to connect this up right here. Now this right here, this little nubbin, this is something you're going to see me do fairly often. The reason why I'm doing this is roadway naming, which is not something we're going to tackle just yet. We'll do that in the next section. But if we have this little nub here, the roadway name will extend all the way right here, and this road will have a new name. Now I'm going to quickly fill in all of these roads along the arterial. Editor Phil here, and I feel like there is value in mentioning that this would never happen all at once like this, particularly for a brand new developer like James. I'd expect that one road might be built at a time and then the rest of the development built in phases, but this is a game, so we'll take a couple of liberties here. All right, let's get back to it. Now over here, I am going to draw the boundary of this farm. This will be a new right-of-way, and I'll kind of come where the hill cuts off. I need this one because this is where we're going to end this road, but I have a thought here. You see that this kind of narrows up, and if I were just to follow this same pattern and go 9 units down, what we'd have is kind of an awkward gap right here. So I'm going to pull this a little bit further down. And the idea will be that when this road is upgraded, we'll get zoning on this side and it'll kind of fill this in a bit more. And now that we have all of our parallel facilities, let's build out these neighborhoods. And I don't want to get overly crazy about this being perfect. What I want to have is a grid, but it will be a bit of a natural grid. It won't be completely, absolutely perfect. And I think it'll look better as a result. So we'll do things like this. We come across here and then just link this up and then draw in some parallel roads that aren't absolutely perfect, but will do the job for us. And switching gears over to this neighborhood, we are going to try not to encroach upon our existing rural development all that much, while still creating lots that would be desirable and ensuring that we aren't preventing future development. And then I've held off on deleting this little segment right here. We are going to take care of this, but I'm concerned that this is our utilities to this entire area. I am not sure how it's not. So let's go through and we'll delete this. And then I'm a little bit concerned still. Probably shouldn't be. Everything looks like it's fine. I'm just going to add a little connection in between our main here and this road. And now we know that everything is absolutely fine. And then one thing that I've done over here that you might have noticed is these roads line up with one another. Right now, we don't want to have too many connections across the highway, but in the future, this is something that we actually might want to encourage to slow traffic down through here, particularly if this becomes a commercial corridor in the future. But for now, it's lined up. We'll have no development where these roads could connect in the future. In fact, we'll probably just add a pedestrian connection. And now over here, I want to maintain the same 9-unit separation in between the railroad track and this road. And there we go. We've got a nice organic grid in this area. And this is likely what you would see right now if you were going to develop a brand new grid from scratch. And the reason for that is you want to respect the topography as well as ensure that you are not encroaching upon any natural features. So this is likely what you would see. Now, there is one thing that we didn't do, and that is urbanize some of the highways through here. And I do believe that would occur in some locations. So in particular, in areas where we have development on both sides of the road, urbanization would be required. So I would definitely expect this segment right here to be built to urban standards, as well as this segment right here and right here. However, this area right here where we have urban development on this side, and on this side we still have a forest, it may or may not occur. There are a couple of options that you might see. You might see half of the road developed to urban standards. So you would see curb and gutter on the south side of Brook Highway, but not on the north side. You could see an escrow established for the upgrade of this to urban standards. So when this area is developed, money will be pulled out of that escrow to finish off this to urban standards. Or you could see James developing this entire road to urban standards and then being paid back in the future when development occurs on this side of the road. Honestly, that's pretty unlikely. I wouldn't see James ever agreeing to that, but I do think that we would see some of this built and then escrows for the rest of it. So that is what we're going to do. We're going to come through and we're going to take our medium road, our arterial, and I want the one with the median in the center because we'll add some trees through here. So in the segments where he's developing both sides, we will absolutely upgrade this. And we'll end up with some kind of strange sections as a result where we have rural segments where it's not the same number of lanes. And if you've ever been on a road like this, this is why. Now, an interesting thing here is because of all of our shifts, we're not actually lining up perfectly. So I'll need to remove this. And an interesting thing, as you come up here and you nail it and it's perfectly straight, that next segment of road will turn blue with it. So if you see that, you know that you've upgraded the entire thing and now it's removed the node and it's one gigantic segment. That's what you want to see. And there we go. Now we've got those nice and straight. So that is one segment. We're going to upgrade right here as well. What I just did right here is I upgraded this entire segment to a 2-lane road, which straightened it out. Then I upgraded it to a 4-lane road, and now we're in a good place there. And then lastly, we need to add some pedestrian connections through here. So I want to add the connections along the river first. These are the most important ones. And we'll make sure that we have our contours on so we're respecting our topography. And there we go. For this entire path, I just tried to take out as few trees as possible and work my way around it. And truthfully, it ends up with some fairly organic looking paths. And that is kind of something that we're trying to do through here generally, make it look organic. Now, for the rest of this, I want to add a number of small connections to make it easy to be a pedestrian here, but maybe not so great to be a motorist. So we're going to add things like this, which will significantly shorten the trip if you're a pedestrian. Just imagine if you didn't have this path and you were right here, you'd have to walk all the way down here, then down here, then down here to get right here. But with this path, you just wait for your walk sign and you can get all the way across here. And we're going to do that in a number of locations. And there we go. We've got pedestrian connections all the way through here. And you can see that it would be really easy to walk around this neighborhood. Maybe not as easy to drive around it, although that wouldn't be too terrible either. And then the very last thing I want to do here is upgrade this road right here to have pedestrian facilities. And this is something I think that the university would really like to see here. It would likely mean adding curb and gutter as well as sidewalks, which is very expensive. Don't get me wrong, but I could see the university chipping in on a project like this. And what we've essentially done here is simply add some sidewalks all the way through here, as well as lower the speeds. So you're not coming into the university at 55 miles per hour or this many kilometers per hour, which is way too fast to be accessing this. It's certainly a much more urban experience, which is what you'd expect to see here. And the other benefit to that is it would make all of these neighborhoods right here accessible to university staff and students alike. I could also see pedestrian facilities being added across the rail in the future, but that is certainly a project for the future, not one for today. And with our new neighborhoods platted, let's move on to adding services, districts, and roadway names. Interestingly, because of the proximity of our new neighborhoods to Bend and the university, most of our city services are already well covered. There's one, though, that we completely missed in the previous episode that we're going to have to add today if we want this area to function well, and that is fire coverage. So that's where I want to begin. We're going to add a firehouse right over here, maybe off of what is now called Green Street. And the reason why I want to place it here is it's not directly on the arterial, but it has easy access to it, access to our university and our new neighborhood. Now, one thing that we will need in this neighborhood that every neighborhood needs is park access. But interestingly, if we look at our leisure view, we can see that this neighborhood is already well covered because of how parked out the entire university campus is. So we don't need to go hard here necessarily if we don't want to, though I'm probably going to add quite a few anyway. And the reason why I say that is I believe that every neighborhood should probably have some sort of a playground within close proximity to it. So we'll add a number of these so that every kid could walk to a playground in their neighborhood. And then of course, we've got to add a dog park. So we'll add a dog park as well. And we'll try to centrally locate this near an access from the arterial so that everyone in the neighborhood could come to this if they wanted to. And then I want to add a couple of sporting amenities. So tennis courts, maybe one of these. We could create some sort of a sports complex over here, or a park complex rather. And then I've added a couple of basketball courts as well. And I'd love to work in a couple of large parks, maybe not the most necessary thing. but I'm thinking that maybe we could break up the grid here and have a large park in the center, a plaza or something of that nature. And I decided to go with the large city park because the plaza is just a little bit too big. Now the terrain is a bit of a concern here, so we'll need to do a bit of work to make this happen. And I decided to use the cut and fill tool so that we could have this nice cut and fill retaining wall behind here with the path and make it feel like this is a little bit more planned. And now that we have our parks, I also want to add some mail service. So we're going to add some mailboxes anyway. And the coverage for this again looks okay, but I think that we could improve it by adding a couple of mailboxes here and there. And truthfully, we never added it through our university, so we should probably add it there as well. And there we go. We've got pretty good coverage all over the place now. And then the last thing I want to do is create a district around this. And the main reason for that is we don't really have any of our university services locked into districts, nor do we have our services over here locked into districts. And what that's going to mean is that we have police over here responding to calls over here and vice versa. Same thing with schools. And it's really, really, really problematic as your city grows. So we'll create a district right over the top of this. And the default name for this is Victoria Terrace. That's not good. We'll go with East Bend instead. And now that we have this district over the top of here, it's as simple as selecting some of our city services and assigning them to a few districts. So for instance, we have our school here, and I will assign that to operate in East Bend, Barksdale, Highland, and the university itself. And I'm going to do that with all of our city services. Now it's interesting, as I do this, I start to realize that our rural areas do not have a district. So if I were to completely isolate all of our city services to just these districts, we'd have lots of problems. So I'm going to hold off on isolating the districts in Bend, and hopefully that'll leave us in a position where this will still get coverage. And in the future, we're going to need to come up with a number of names for our rural towns. So if you have some names, leave them in the comments below. And then the very last thing I want to do is name some of the streets through here. I think we'll need to do this in a bigger way in the future, but I want to name a couple of core streets. In particular, we're going to rename this. Ooh, and look at that. It's doing some weird naming things. So this is going to be University Avenue, but we got to figure out why it is turning the corner here. And I am curious if I go ahead and upgrade this little highway segment here to a normal city street, if this will fix things. That did not fix it. So what might fix it is actually this. And that did the trick. I just upgraded a little bit more of this street and it's doing some strange things, but it's a lot better. So now this right here is its own street. And I am going to take Sheffield Highway and we will upgrade this to be a local road. Now, I do think that the city would likely want to upgrade this, so we'll take a little bit of a liberty here and say that this is happening right away. And now that we have this upgraded, it has become 6th Street, which, again, not exactly what I wanted, but I think we might have to leave it, otherwise it'll completely break. We will rename this one University Avenue, and this one Carp Street. This street right here, Autumn Street, I'm thinking about calling a mulligan on. So I said that the driving factor through here was not overbuilding roads. And I think that we built a road that we don't need right here and another one right here. And that did mean that I need to add another mailbox right through here. But if we take a look at our zoning, it's still completely full. And that's really all that James cares about. Same thing right here on Cooper Street, not necessary. And then we'll add paths through here. And then for the rest of these, I'm going to name them really, really quickly. And there we go. I've done a couple of things here that are kind of interesting. So first of all, we have a Jones Street running straight through here, north and south. We also have a Carp Street named after the river. And then we have a whole bunch of numbered streets, But on this side of the river, rather than it being streets, we have avenues. So we have First Avenue, Third Avenue. This one right here, I didn't get to rename, and part of the reason is we're seeing some strange naming stuff going on. And if we wanted to fix that, we have to upgrade the road, which I don't want to do just yet. So we'll fix that one down the line. That'll be Second Avenue. And then we've added Jamila Way and things of that nature, because generally street naming happens from the developer and not from the city itself. And now that we have our city services, districts, and roadway names in place, let's move on to adding our zoning. I have a couple of unorthodox ideas here. I'm thinking that it could be really fun to show which homes James developed by developing them as European single-family homes. And then for all of the rest of them, we'll use our North American to show lots that he sold. Perhaps he provided some building plans or things of that nature that were approved in those lots, and that is why his lots look different. So we're gonna basically choose all the lots that are close to the water and develop them for James. So we'll start right here near our park, and I'll just try to vary the size up a little bit. I think that most of these are gonna fill in relatively quickly. And then we're likely going to want to control our zoning because we have some crazy things going on, like right here where we have some focused on one street and some focused on another. We may just want to formalize that. And I've just used paths to refocus the zoning on Carp Street, considering these homes would likely have a view of the water. And this honestly is about it for James. That is a lot of homes, and truthfully, this would be an undertaking that would take him quite a long time. For the rest of these, we will go and switch over to our North American, and we will build low density throughout most of this area, with the exception of the area along the university. We're going to bump up and have some medium density there. I am going to sneak in a couple of pockets of neighborhood commercial though, because that would be something I would expect to see here as well. Particularly if the city was involved in the planning of this, they would want to see people to be able to walk to a couple of things here and there. Okay, that was a lot of individual zoning, but I think that's what we have to do if we want a varied housing stock and a little bit more visual interest and a little bit less uniformity through here. So I have gone ahead and done a couple of things that I think might be a little bit interesting to you. I've created a little bit of a commercial strip right here with an office, and I'm noticing we still have no office demand. I think we are going to need to take a look at our taxes in just a moment, but I wanted to make sure that we had a little bit of commercial and office through here. Nothing over here. This is very residential as we get closer to the rural areas. And then over here, I basically ignored all of the zoning along the train track. And the reason for that is I had an idea as I was zoning this. So I talked about adding additional density. We're going to do that along here. However, I want to add a pedestrian connection across the rail track, which may be a little bit controversial. I talked about a bridge potentially in the future, but for now we will have an at-grade crossing, which is not ideal, but I think it is something that you could get done right now. The other thing I've done is I've controlled the zoning quite a bit to ensure that homes are facing in the right direction and that they are backing the arterials, not fronting them. So I think that that would be a pretty significant concern through here. One of the things that I've noticed though as I've gone through this is we've got some messy connections right here and some potential opportunities for something that I should have thought about in the previous section, maybe a park around this crazy intersection right here. And finally, let's switch gears over by the train tracks, and we will go with medium density all up and down here. And I am going to mix this between the North American and the European just for a little bit more visual diversity. And I have a nice mix of row homes, low rent housing, and then medium density. So a lot is going on here, a lot of density here. And that is precisely why I want to make that path connection across. So this will open up the university to all of this housing right here, which I think would be a huge, huge, huge boon for the university. And there we go. At some point, it'll just be a walk through the forest and across the railroad tracks, and you'd be able to get right here into this neighborhood. And I've let this all fill in, and you can see there's now this row of density along the train corridor, which is kind of what I was hoping for. These would be places where students could live. Think of graduate students or things of that nature. And we've got a nice variety of buildings through here as well. Some townhomes. This is a little bit strange. We'll probably want to get rid of that one. But I'm taking a bit of advice from the comments here. With the row homes in particular, there have been a number of comments that have said, group these and leave some gaps so it feels like individual developments. So I've done that, and I do like the way that that has turned out. The very last thing that I want to do as we look at our zoning is adjust our money, our taxation, because I think it's way too high. We've been at 17% for a while now, and our residential demand is keeping up, but for offices where we're generating most of our revenue, we haven't had demand in a long time. So I'm going to lower this down, and hopefully we can find some sort of an equilibrium and bring that demand back. And to resolve all of our issues with the rent being too high, I'm going to try to lower the taxation for residential. And you can see it has led to a rebound in office demand, which is going to matter because later on when we redevelop parts of Main Street, we'll add some more high density uses, including some higher density offices, which will hopefully generate some more revenue for us. And now with our zoning in place, let's move on to building the Eisenhower Bridge. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to tackle the Eisenhower Bridge, which will be a bridge that basically links Eisenhower Street up to the university, is I think it'll reduce travel costs for all of those that are traveling to the university for work. And we've got a lot of density right here, so I think there's a lot of synergy between the university and this neighborhood. So this is something that would be very controversial, I would assume, but we're going to do it anyway. And things like this can happen when they're part of a city's plans, and that's what we're going to say was the case right here. So we've got to have our contour lines on, and we are going to snap to basically everything. And I'm going to pull this into the water, and we'll go up 3% or so. And now we'll switch gears and go over to this little stub road that we have over here, which interestingly right now is a dirt road. I'll need to turn off snap to zoning cell length. And I will upgrade the rest of this road. I am concerned that we're going to lose some of our oaks, but thankfully we have the line tool, so we should be able to fairly simply replace those. Yep, we lost a bunch. And then I will add a turn lane in here as well for the same reasons that we did it over here, so that you could enter either lane if you wanted to. And now that we have that in place, let's rename this. Eisenhower Street going into, we'll rename this the Myrtle Circle. And hopefully Myrtle has been appeased. And now this does go all the way through here, Eisenhower Street. We are looking good. I do want to be a little bit proactive right here. This will eventually be very, very, very busy in terms of traffic. So I am going to signalize this. Now, normally that's not the way that things work. You signalize things after you know that there's a problem, not before. But we'll say that it's been warranted here through traffic modeling, and as a result, we're adding that right here. I'm also going to remove a little bit of parking. I already see that there's a lot of people parking on the street here, and I don't want people parking along the bridge and the road leading up to it. That's kind of strange. So we'll make a couple of targeted improvements. We're removing parking on the side of the street that has the single family homes, which reasonably, I think that they'd want that anyway. And things are flowing well there. I am going to replace these trees quickly. And one of the cool things that's happened since the last time we played is that the line tool has an update. So now we do have this interface right here. No clicking, no shortcuts. Everything is right where you'd expect it to be. And there we go. I think the most challenging thing is making sure that the spacing was proportional in between the trees, so it looks like they are the old trees that were there. And we can see that we've got a decent amount of traffic flowing across this bridge, which means that we are reducing travel costs for everyone over here that is trying to reach their jobs at the university. So I'm very pleased with that. And now with our bridge in place, let's move on to a bit of Main Street redevelopment. And we've made our way back to Bend, which is really exciting, except that we're seeing that we've got lots of problems with rent that's too damn high. So we're going to need to do something about that. And what I'm thinking that we're going to do is where we see these indicators, I want to rezone and increase the density. Now, all the way along Riverbend Boulevard, I think that we'd eventually see some increases in density. So we'll start to do a bit of that now. And I do want to moderate the building heights. So that means that we are going to really control the size of our building pad. I'm going to de-zone these couple of homes that are complaining. And then we'll go in with some low rent housing and our very first high density building. And for this, again, the height matters, and that is very tall. So we'll call a mulligan. And that's even taller. Wow, that was not what I was expecting. Okay, it looks like this 2x5 is a much more reasonable height, so we'll go with something like that. There is a bit of space in between these buildings, and I think that that is incredibly important. As you zone up, you need to spread things out because you want to make sure that there's enough space for light to cast in between these buildings. You don't want things on top of each other if they don't have to be. Gotta remember, you still have a ton of dwelling units through here, so you don't need to put the buildings butting up against one another. You can do that, but you probably shouldn't. The other thing that we likely want to consider would be parking in a general area like this. So I'm gonna add a bit of parking right here, and then we've got very strong office demand. I'm gonna add one small office tower. And by small, I meant ridiculously large, so we're gonna switch this up and have a commercial building here. And I've let this block fill in, and I'm very pleased with the results. We've got our tallest building in the entire county, but it's not overwhelming. It's 16 stories, which is a very large building, but not totally unreasonable. Not if it's your first tall building anyway. I am going to add a couple of more. I really want to find a way to make a tower work for office. And I think this might be about it, but we'll experiment. So this is 3x3. And it looks about the same height as that residential tower. 2x2 is considerably taller. If we give it whatever this is, holy cow, that is massive. That is 3x5, way too big. So I do think that this 3x2 is probably as good as we get if we want to have an office tower. They're just really large buildings. And then right here, I've decided to add one mixed use building, one low rent housing, and then obviously we've got that office that we were building before. Now, before we increase density, I do want to go through and make sure that we've followed Planner Duck's advice, which is that on our side streets, have some smaller homes. And you can see that we haven't done that everywhere. So I will get rid of some of these, and that will create smaller lots, which is more affordable housing. So a little bit of a mulligan here, but I think it's a good one. And there we go. We've redeveloped most of our side streets along with this little bit of redevelopment along the Main Street core, which I think is going to do a lot in terms of our affordability. And here we have our first office tower. And you know what? The height, again, isn't all that bad. I'm really pleased with that. And honestly, seeing how reasonable the height is of this tower, it kind of makes me wonder, if we had some European towers in here, would they be shorter and maybe a bit more reasonable for a town this size? I think we'll rezone an area with some lower density stuff along Main Street and give it a shot. And though this looks massive, I'm going to give it a shot. We're going to see if this is actually as tall as it seems. And indeed it is. This is just way too big for the city right now, so we will definitely call a bit of a mulligan on this and try to get something that's a little bit more moderate in terms of size. And there we go. That should be much better. Now, a big part of affordability is also having good jobs. And you might have wondered why I've been going off on the offices. I think that this is something that would be very necessary. So we will continue our redevelopment. And I think we'll go with some lower density offices, redeveloping some of these homes, along with the odd smaller office tower as well. And continuing behind Main Street on Riverbend, we've completely redeveloped this block as well. We've got everything from a low density office, medium density residential, high density office, high density commercial, medium density residential, really mixing everything in right here like you might expect to see in a downtown area. And it looks a little bit bare right now, but as we add some landscaping in the future, I think things will begin looking really, really, really good right here. And I think we'll round things off with this block right here. We'll leave these for now, but we'll finish off these couple of blocks back here with some row homes, another low rent building, and a bit more control of our zoning. Now, I have gone through and basically wherever I know that we're not zoning things, I have been removing zoning. I just want to make sure that I fully understand what's there in the future. So you see that right here, I removed the zoning behind this office building. Not at all necessary, but to me, it makes sense so that I know what I've done. And there we go. We've got all of our buildings in place and we're starting to see the density increase along the river. And I really like the way that looks. I do think that at some point it'd be really great to have a taller building through here, but the community's just not big enough for that just yet. In fact, we've probably overdone it a little bit, but who doesn't like a bit of density? Now, the one thing I do want to look at is our money, and look at that. We're basically at an equilibrium. If we had a little bit more density somewhere, I think we would see complete equilibrium, or we'll see this go into the green. So I'm thinking that we'll take a look at a couple of these areas where we've got little spots of high rent, and we will redevelop a little bit more. But I want to taper our densities, so we will continue with some row homes over here. And I'm sure you've been in this spot where you just really are enjoying redeveloping, and I decided to increase the density a little bit more along our 3rd Street corridor, which is honestly where we're going to see a lot of density anyway. And now I feel like I've just got to take a step back before I continue redeveloping everything. So let's move on to a little bit of rural development. For today's bit of rural development, I thought it might be nice to complete the loop all the way around the lake. So what we'll do is continue our Jeffersonian grid. So knowing that this is where our next road is going to be, I added that right away. Now we'll buy a tile and do the exact same thing once more. And then we'll buy a tile, and then we'll do the exact same thing once again. And then finally, we'll buy that last tile. And I will add this road, even though I don't think we're going to do anything with it just yet today. There we go. So I added those as guidelines for myself because what I really want to do is find a way around here that makes sense with the terrain. Interestingly, look at this. We actually need to buy 1 or 2 more tiles. We'll buy all of the tiles. 3 tiles, and now we're not confined by an arbitrary boundary. So we're going to run this road all the way along the side of the river. And there we go. That is our main highway around here. We're likely going to upgrade this, but I do want to add our Jeffersonian grid lines through here first. And now that we've added all of these roads through here, I'm going to upgrade this road along the water to be a highway, and we will just assume that this is one of our county highways. And I'll just hold down here and pull this all the way over here, and we are upgraded all the way along there. Now, one of the interesting things that I've noticed as we've been doing this is that we now are in the positive with money. We could add more development through here and continue to increase our money, but I think that for today, we're just going to leave this like this, and we'll focus on something more significant in this area in the future. So for now, I think we're going to move on to a bit of landscaping and detailing. Reasonably, most of what we're going to be doing today is spraying trees, but I don't want to stop there. I do want to focus heavily on our arterials and really give some thought to what we might have in the medians and what we might do to block some of this sound from reaching some of these homes, because I do think that that would be a consideration. I also want to think about traffic control because we've got stoplights all up and down here, and that is not desirable. So let's begin by going into our road services menu, and all up and down University, I want to have trees. So we're going to add medians. And then where we don't have medians, such as on this 2 lane, we'll just add it to the side, and then we'll add our trees. And there we go. So you've got this interesting mix of sections through here, which I think, it's very plausible that that could happen. Now, the other place I want to focus is along Carp Street, where I think you might want to control parking along the park side. So we're going to remove it there. We'll add trees and a grassy terrace. Very good. So this will cause all parking to occur near the homes, which I think is probably a good thing. And then over here, we're going to do the exact same thing. So on Eisenhower right now, there is parking available. I don't want that. If you park students, you're going to park in the parking lots that we've given you right back here. And because we already have trees all the way along here, I'm not going to plant any. I think it's completely fine as is. And then right here, nobody should park here, but you just never know. So we'll add street trees to the orchard side, and on the side with the Superior sign, we'll leave it completely without trees. And I really, really like that. Now, interestingly, we are seeing that there is some high rent signs here already. Curious to see what we can learn about the residents that live here. It's a student going to the School of Law, paying for a single family home. How about right here? Another student. Right here, another student. So these students decided to get single family homes rather than live in one of these apartment complexes. Maybe that's because, honestly, we don't have enough. So that might be a thing that would cause redevelopment in the future, but that's not a today thing. That's a in the future thing. For now, we are going to run some oak trees right along the back of this road, and I will randomize the rotation, and then we'll leave these fairly separated because I still want to spray trees through this area. But this is really all about sound buffering. And then right here, there's a little bit of imperfection. I decided to leave it. So first of all, we've got a rural power line right here, which is why we can't plant trees consistently back here. But we've also got these trees that are too close to the road. And this is something that you'll see from time to time. And I wanted to leave it here as a result. So basically, this row of trees leaves enough space for us to upgrade the road here. This one does not. This whole row will be taken down, and then we'll plant them normally, and we'll see that difference in age over time. And I really like that idea. And that's one of the nice things about the tree growth mechanic that we do lose when we use the line tool. But I still love the line tool, so I'm going to keep using it. And then back here, one more thing. I'm going to call a little bit of a mulligan, remove this home. And I've done that so that I could add some trees along here. This would be a very loud environment. So we've got to have some sort of a landscape buffer. And of course, I just get done mentioning the power line, and it's right here. There's nothing that we can do for this. Short of maybe some apple trees, which are a little bit shorter and could maybe be underneath the power line. There we go. And then the very last thing I want to do before we spray some trees is just work around here and add a bit of landscaping. And there we go. And the whole goal here was to, again, add that separation, make this feel a bit more secluded. Now, with that in place, we're going to spray the rest of this with a whole bunch of trees. And now I'm noticing that we've got some rough edges around here. Let's smooth some of those out. We had to take a couple of liberties right here, but I'm really pleased with the way it turned out, so I'm not going to worry about it all that much. Now, going back to our traffic control momentarily, I want to remove a whole bunch of signals along here and add just a couple. Right here, for instance, no signal. I like that. Right here, we probably don't need one again, so we'll get rid of that. Same thing right here and right here. And right here, we've got a lot of signals going on. We don't need that one. Just let this free-flowing movement come through, and woof, that is pretty rough looking. And I'm trying to remove this one, and it's telling me no, and that tells me one thing. We've got to remove these paths and redo them. They're actually attached to the road, and I think it's a bug, but basically I can't remove those. And then I'll just reestablish these, but I won't touch the road, and that will allow me to remove those signals. The other thing I want to do around here is remove a whole bunch of crossings, and we'll get pedestrians out of this intersection right here because we've already got a couple of shorter, safer crossings, so we don't need all these other ones. And there we go. That leaves us with just the signals right here. Looks like we also have a left turn that doesn't make any sense, so we'll remove that. And the same thing here. And then we should be good to go, and that'll help out with our traffic flow. And right here, I think we have another signal. Yeah, we'll get rid of that. That is very, very, very good. And then there are a couple signals right here. Let's get rid of these as well. And there's probably one more or two more over here. We'll get rid of those as well. Very, very good. The very last thing I want to do, though, is over here. We've got a couple of new plaza type areas, and I feel like we should clean them up. And I decided to do a little bit of a mix of things here. I've planted some trees myself so that we have some of that age progression of the landscaping. And then at other spots where I wanted things to be really well manicured, I have gone through and planted a whole bunch of stuff using the line tool, but also planted a couple of things brand new in the middle so we get to see that growth. So I think we've got a nice mix of things. That's something I've heard in the comments is I really miss that age growth mechanic. It makes it feel like places have age, and I completely agree. So I am very, very, very pleased with where we are ending up today. Things are really starting to improve, and we're about to crack 10,000 population very, very soon. Budget is basically balanced. I think there's only one more thing left to do. That's take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. And before we go, I let this run for a while after making one small adjustment, and it has resolved most of our issues with high rent. Basically, I've gone into taxation and I took our commercial, industrial, and office and adjusted them all to 14%. And then underneath our residential, I've completely adjusted everything. So basically, for our uneducated, poorly educated, and educated citizens, we've lowered taxes. And then for those that are well-educated with more money, we've increased the tax rate on them to try to balance things out. And for the most part, wow, I did not expect to see that. I guess we could even lower taxes for them. Things are looking really good generally. In fact, let's just bump things down for our residential. And even with that, we're looking pretty good from a financial standpoint. So that should really help out and make things affordable for those that can afford it the least. And generally what that has meant is that our city is in a very good spot with our rent. Couple of people complaining, but not all that many at all. And the other interesting thing about this that I'm noticing is that when we click on these, oftentimes we're seeing that it's a student living in a house by themselves, sometimes with a pet. And yeah, that would be very expensive. Here's another situation that we're seeing quite a bit, and that is a student living with a retiree in a home, and they are struggling with rent, even though they're wealthy apparently. So we've done everything that we can, and I think that for the most part, things are looking pretty darn good. So I think we're going to leave it here, and I really hope that you've enjoyed this episode. I've enjoyed bringing it to you. If you did, please consider hitting the like button. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I want to thank you for joining me today. This is the first episode of the new year, and I'm really looking forward to what we do in 2024. Thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.